All right, this is Eduardo. Everybody, as always, I'm going to be calling roll call, starting with chair, vice chair, and then by alphabetical order. So please be ready to unmute your phone when I call your name. So starting with Chair Ortega.
Present.
Vice Chair Walter Miller.
Good morning, President.
Mayor Antonio Araujo. Mayor Ivy Apples. Senator Cesar Blanco.
Present.
Thank you. New Mexico Senator Joseph Cervantes. Marisol, can you please mute all? Because there's an echo. And as a reminder, unmute when I call your name. Next, Trent Doolittle. Okay. Representative Art Fierro. Okay. Representative Mary Gonzalez. City Manager Tommy Gonzalez.
Here.
Thank you. City Representative Cassandra Hernandez.
Present.
Thank you. Yvette Hernandez.
Good morning. Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Ileana Holguin.
Present. Good morning, everyone.
And happy belated birthday. New Mexico State Representative Raimundo Lara. Okay. Mayor Oscar Leeser.
Present. Good morning, everyone.
Mayor Manuel Leos.
Present.
City Rep Sissy Lizarraga. Okay. Chuck McMahon.
Good morning, President.
Representative Joe Moody. Okay. Alderman Esteban Olivas. State Rep Claudia Ordaz Perez. Okay. Norma Palacios.
Good morning. Present.
Thank you. Mayor Javier Perea.
Present.
Representative Henry Rivera.
Present. Good morning, everyone.
Sam Rodriguez.
Present.
Thank you. Benjamin Romero. Okay. Judge Ricardo Samaniego.
Buenos días. Present.
Thank you. Ellen Smythe.
Present.
Thank you. Tomas Treviño.
Present. Morning, everybody.
And Mayor Diana Trujillo. All right. So we do have quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I want to start with really important business, and that's to wish happy birthday, belated birthday to Commissioner Holguin, and happy birthday to our senator whose birthday it is today. So happy birthday to both of you all, and thank you for joining us on this meeting. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
Nobody signed up for public comment.
Okay. All right, then we move on to item 1 on the agenda.
All right. So item 1 is discussion and action to approve the minutes of the March 26, 2021 El Paso EPMPO TPB meeting.
Motion to approve. Rivera.
Is there a second? Anybody against? Hearing none, the motion is then approved. Item 2.
All right. Item 2 is coming from TPAC. It's discussion and action to approve recommendations from the Transportation Project Advisory Committee to amend the Destino 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan MTP, amended Destino 2045 MTP, Destino 2019-2023 Transportation Improvement Program TIP, and Destino 2021-2024 TIP to amend the I-10 widening East Lake to FM 1281 to move from fiscal year 2022 to fiscal year 2021.
Good morning. Greg McNichol here with Chairman of the TPAC. And just real quickly, this is a pretty straightforward item. This is all about TxDOT wanting to balance the letting of projects. And it's a pretty straightforward action. And in this case, we're moving the project forward. So I recommend it to y'all for approval.
Excellent.
Is there a motion to approve the amendment?
Motion to
moved.
approve.
Approved, Miller?
And is there a second?
Second,
On motion?
Rivera.
Okay. Are there any questions, any discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none, then we'll go ahead and proceed on the vote on this amendment under item 2. Is there anyone that is not in favor of it? Hearing none, item number 2, motion passes. We can now move on to reports under number 3, item 3.
Okay, item number 3, it's administratively amend the Destino 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan MTP, amend the Destino 2045 MTP, Destino 2019-2023 Transportation Improvement Program TIP, and Destino 2021-2024 TIP to amend the I-10 widening Antonio Street to Mesa Street to replace a partial amount of Category 2 Metropolitan Area TMA Corridor projects with State Infrastructure Bank SIB loan funds in fiscal year 2022. We're showing TxDOT, but I think we can take care of this item here. The project that we're talking about is the widening of I-10 on the west side from Mesa going pretty much up to the state line, the New Mexico state line. And the administrative amendment was to swap $30 million of funds. We are inserting $30 million of funds that were obtained from a SIB loan that the Camino Real RMA requested from the State Infrastructure Bank, and so that we can then take out $30 million of Category 2 that will be used for other projects. So again, this is a great example of the partnership here in the region where actually it's the city of El Paso who will be paying for the SIB loan through their TRZ number 2. The RMA takes out the loan, so the TRZ funds will go to the RMA so that the RMA can make the payments on the SIB loan. But that will allow us to use $30 million of Category 2 money for other projects that we will be bringing to the policy board very soon. The fact that this is an administrative amendment instead of a formal amendment of the TIP and going through the STIP process is because the amount of money that we're talking about is less than 50% of federal funds. In other words, if the 30 million were more than 50% of federal money on the project, then it would have to go through a formal TIP revision. But we don't have to do that, but we're bringing it here to the policy board just so that everybody's aware of it, and because it is a really good thing. So happy to answer any questions.
I do not hear any questions, but
Yeah.
I have a question because it's an administrative amendment. Do we have to have a motion to approve this administrative amendment or not?
No. I mean, it's not an action item. All of this can be done administratively, but you know, as always, you know, for full disclosure and transparency, we bring these amendments for awareness of the policy board. And of course, many of you were already aware of this because it really is a really good thing that we're doing here to advance other projects as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Calvo. Then we can move on now to item 4.
Okay, item number 4 is City of El Paso PM10 classification request. And on this item, I believe Claudia Valles from the MPO staff will be making a really short presentation.
Yes, good morning. Claudia Valles, El Paso MPO. So in January of 2021, staff from the Capital Improvement Department of the City of El Paso request that El Paso MPO staff investigate the possibility of reclassification of the city from the status of non-attainment that we currently have it to unclassified for PM10. After an intensive research that we done, MPO staff reached out to officials with TxDOT El Paso District and TxDOT Environment for more information on the process undertaken by City El Paso, which is unclassified for PM10, and to inquire into whether it will be possible for the City El Paso to pursue a similar process. Furthermore, a review on the Clean Air Act indicates that it provides no mechanism for moving from non-attainment status to unclassified. But on the other hand, we have the possibility that Texas Commission Environmental Quality, the TCQ, is currently considering recommending a maintenance designation for El Paso MPO region based on the monitor data that we have until the moment. Someone has a question?
Yep. Let me add to that. So the question really came from City of El Paso staff, and it was actually a really good question because historically, at the same time where these designations were happening back in the late 80s and early 90s, the city of Lubbock got away with not being designated as non-attainment, right? And as you all know, PM10, well, is one of the pollutants, but it adds a lot of procedural stuff that we have to show for individual projects, in addition to show conformity at the regional level. But for individual projects that are within the limits of the city of El Paso, which is the designated non-attainment area for PM10, it adds a lot of procedural stuff that we have to go through. So it was a really good question, and initially we did not have a clear answer. So that's why Claudia did a lot of good research with EPA, with the TCEQ, and it was also in coordination with TxDOT, Environmental Affairs, that they clarified that what really happened, the bottom line is that when this designation process was happening back in the late 80s, Lubbock asked the question and demonstrated that, just like we do, that their PM10 problem is mostly because, we live in the desert, right? So PM10 is dust. So they were able to show that, even if we eliminated all the man-made emissions of PM10, they would still have the problem. In our case, I believe that EPA and TCEQ said no because of the being in the border and because of the emissions that we would be having coming in from Juarez. The bottom line is that once we were officially designated as non-attainment, that's it. We have to go through the process of moving, showing through time that we are reducing our emissions, and then moving from non-attainment to maintenance. And once we are in maintenance for up to 20 years, then perhaps we will move on become attainment, right? In other words, not have to worry about PM10. So we are right now moving towards the first 10-year maintenance period. So hopefully in 20 years we'll become attainment. So, but again, that was a really good question that we got from the city of El Paso. But unfortunately, there's not much we can do other than make sure that we select good projects and try to reduce our emissions of PM10 so that we do well in this maintenance 20-year period. So with that, I don't know if anybody has any more questions.
I do have a question this is Walter, through the chair, without getting too much into the weeds. Is there any way to separate industrial PM10 from natural PM10?
Okay. Eduardo, do you have an answer to that, or anybody else on staff?
Obviously, we get into the technicalities of all this, but when you measure PM10, yes, you are able to separate emissions coming from what they call a site, point site like an industry, right? Or from mobile sources like trucks and automobiles and all that. So the way that these emissions are managed, we obviously we don't get penalized if there are emissions. Point sources.
Okay. So there is hope, in other words.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Then let us move on then to item 5.
All right, so item 5 is a status update on the use of Federal Highway Administration, FHWA funds transferred to Federal Transit Administration, FTA, for Sun Metro projects. This is an item that was on the agenda from last month that the presentation was not made, so it carries over to this month. So with that, I believe we have officials from Sun Metro.
Yes, this is Jesus Trejo from Sun Metro, Business Manager. I'm gonna go really quick through this presentation because it does include a lot of the other grants that Sun Metro receives, not necessarily concentrated on the CMAQ funding, but the CMAQ funding is included in here. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is the basic annual apportionments that Sun Metro gets from the FTA, and it includes the CARES, and right now it's the CARES, the initial, and then the CARISA, which was the second stimulus. The competitive grants that we have are right now in process: Innovative Mobile Pay and HOPE, and then the small starts for the 5309 for additional funding that was remaining from projects, and we're asking the FTA to approve for us to use that funding on the same corridors, but for maybe purchase of buses or mini stations, crosswalks, and stuff like that. And then the one on the right-hand side is the FTA transfers, which is including the CMAQ funding. We have Alameda, Dyer, and Montana RTS operating assistance, the I-10 mitigation assistance, which is being used up right now, and then the streetcar, which is we're basically done. We just need to finish up some cleanup and closing of the grant. And then we have some bus purchase money and engine rebuilds. Next screen, please. So this is basically a summary of the last 3 years, 19, 20, and 21, for funding received. And you can see right there that preventive maintenance is one of the biggest expenses that we use this 5307 funding for. Next. Under the CARES Act, as the FDA recommended, we're using most of it for payroll, but it also included initially for the continuance of operation, preventive maintenance. And so right now these numbers have been outdated. I guess we haven't updated the screen to show the full funding. We are somewhere around $33 million used up out of the 40. So we have about another 11 million that we're gonna use between now and maybe September, October of 2021. Next screen, please. The CARISA was the second stimulus that was issued to the transportation system. So it's a total of 7.1. Our plan is to use it mostly for payroll, utility, security services. And that's part of what we are budgeting for in our fiscal year 22. Next screen, please. The bus and bus facility formula 5339. This is another one that we usually get, as you can see, around $1.52 million every year. And right now we're changing gears into putting all the funding that we can into buying replacement buses. And we're gonna try and standardize everything into 35-foot buses and the articulated 60-footers. The 60-footers, of course, are the newest ones that we have, so those are not coming due for replacement anytime soon, but we're still putting them in our projections. The rest of the funding is being used for facility rehabs, which we haven't really had a capital plan for a while. So we're coming up with a capital plan on repairs, maintenance, and rehabs for the transfer centers. And next, on the HOPE grant, this is basically just a study, and the FTA is going to pay 90%, the county is going to do 5%, and San Metro is going to do 5% for the study, and hopefully we can come up with a regional fare or some type of agreement where you pay one fare and you ride any of the available sources of ridership. Next, the mobile pay is currently in process. We do have an initial, I guess it's a pilot program right now that's running or is going to be tested out. The total match was 50% of the 450 award. So San Metro is going to put that from the sales tax that we receive. Next screen. The Montana BRT and RTS corridors project. This is what I was talking about. The remaining funding from well, actually, no. This is the original BRT Montana, which is in process right now. I believe there's plans to complete it by December of this year. So we should be starting service somewhere around January, February of 2022. And there's some leftover funding that we're probably going to request the FTA to do some modifications or additional stops along the way. Next screen. The Dyer corridor. This is the remaining funding that we had from the Dyer project. We are asking to build 2 mini stations and buy 3 articulated buses, and to construct mid-block crossings right there by Thorpe and Dyer, just to keep people from crossing in the middle of the street, getting into traffic and in danger, I guess. Next screen. This is just an image of where these stations are going to be placed at. These were initially not included in the plan, but after the construction was completed and the funding was left over, we figured it would be a very good idea to put these stops in this area. Next screen. The Dyer corridor. This is the proposal to buy 3 60-foot articulated buses. And this is already submitted to the FTA for pre-approval. Once they come back and tell us that it's okay, then we'll go ahead and submit the formal request to appropriate the funds for the bus purchases. Next screen. This is the crosswalks to get from one side of the street to the other without getting into traffic. And this is going to include the guardrails so that people don't dash into the street. Next screen. This is just some more images of the area. Next screen. On the Mesa corridor, we had a remaining balance from the project, and basically we were waiting for the Mesa street to be repaired before we could build the Montecillo station. The FTA kind of rushed us into spending the money, and so we're going to build an alternate stop. And this is just the proposal to move the remaining funds for an additional 60-foot articulated bus after we build the mini stop at Argonaut. Next. The operating assistance, this is basically all the operating assistant grants that are in process right now. As you can see right there, we're still pending to receive the fiscal year 22 through 24 Montana RTS operating assistance. And so right now the balance on the streetcar is showing 133,000, but we're actually done spending that, and the others have a little bit less than that balance. Like I said, the screen has not been updated to the last drawdown. Next. Sun Metro engine rebuilds. We are still working on bringing down the balance. We're down to about 700,000 on that. We're using it to cover engine overhauls and to include the radiators and transmissions for the buses. The right-hand side, you have the CMAQ transfers of 5,267,000. We're waiting for an analysis for the air quality control to make sure that the difference between a 35-foot and a 40-foot bus does not change. I believe there was some comment that it would be the same. And so once we get the official word on that, then we can go ahead and request for the funds to be used to purchase 35-foot buses instead of 40-foot buses. And this will be an MPO decision to use the funding for the 35-footers. Okay, any questions on this one? This is basically the one that we needed to look at.
Madam Chair, this is Eduardo. Can I make a comment or a question here?
Of course, go ahead.
So yeah, the purpose. I mean, this is a very complete presentation, and thank you for that, Jesus. But really, the intent of our request to have Sun Metro come to the board was really, the bottom line is the information on slides 15 and 16, because that is the money that goes to Sun Metro through the FTA transfers, right? So that's when we take CMAQ money and then it's transferred to FTA, and then the Sun Metro is able to access that. And as we were looking at doing our audits, internal audits of our funds, we realized that there was a lot of these FTA transfers that were done in the past, in prior years, and we really did not have a record of how the money, or if the money was spent, right? Because once it goes into FTA, then we really don't track it. But this money originated from the MPO. It's part of our CMAQ money. So in talking to Sun Metro and with Ellen and staff, we really are need to be tracking this and especially make sure that the funds are spent quickly, because again, as you see there on this table, there is money that was awarded almost 5 years ago that still hasn't been spent for whatever reason, right? But I think it's important for transparency of everybody and make sure that the money is well spent. As it is, the CMAQ funds are very scarce, and there's a lot of competition for them, but we have to make sure that when the projects are awarded, that the funds are spent quickly. So I really thank Sun Metro for doing this, bringing this information to the board.
And based on the presentation that was made, Mr. Calvo, are there any other additional questions that you may have with regard to the funding and how it was spent?
No, not really. It's a matter of making sure that the funds are spent, and given that the money was awarded in the past, we have to make sure that if there is, because of course things change, right? We would like to make sure that the funds are spent according to what the original intent was, right?
Right.
And there are some air quality issues like it was mentioned earlier, the air quality analysis that has to be submitted with each CMAQ proposal and so on. But we're working with Sun Metro, and we really want to make sure that the money is spent quickly and on good things, to help the transit service here in our region.
And I just want to add that the funding that you see on the screen right now on slide 16 was originally, I guess, transferred for the purpose of buying buses. It's just right now we have I guess we're trying to agree on replacing the 40-foot buses with 35-foot buses. And it seems to be the air quality issue that's keeping us from spending this money.
Well, I mean, I think that it is great for transparency reasons and making sure that we keep up with everything and that we use the funds as being appropriated to this community, because as we all know, any funds that we receive are precious, and we need to make sure that we use them in accordance with what is being asked of us, and that we, in order to go back and seek additional funding. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, if I may, Madam Chair, this is Ellen Smythe, Sun Metro.
Yes, please proceed.
So I just wanted to clarify the reason that we're requesting 35-foot buses rather than the original approved 40-foot buses is because of the financially, Sun Metro is, we did suffer a loss with the sales tax, and we were able to get an additional unit because the 35-foot buses are a little bit less expensive than the 40-foot buses. And so we're actually coming out ahead if we're able to get this approval. But if we're not able to get the approval, we will go ahead and buy the 40-foot buses. But I was just hoping that I could squeeze one more bus out of the same amount of money. And as you know, many of you know that some Metro buses don't run to capacity. We have a lot of buses that are not even close to being full. So there's really no reason that we need to be purchasing 40-foot buses right now until we get our ridership up.
Right.
So those were the two reasons that I was putting this request in. And then secondly, I've only been here a year. The previous administration had a different philosophy on how they were spending down the grant funding. But my philosophy is exactly like Eduardo, Mr. Cava just said. We need to spend it right now. So I am not going to be sitting on any grant money. We're going to be spending it as soon as we possibly can. So you don't have to worry about that happening again.
Right.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right. Hearing none, we can move on to item 6.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Smythe and Mr. Trejo. All right, item 6 is the RMS 2050 Travel Demand Model Status Report. Salvador Gonzalez from the EPMPO staff will give a brief update.
Yes, good morning, everybody. This is Salvador Gonzalez, El Paso EPMPO. We just wanted to show you very briefly some additional dynamic capabilities of our TDM. And for that, we have here Sean McAtee from Cambridge Systematics. So, Marisol, if you could allow Sean to share his screen, please.
Great, thank you, Salvador. So yes, just a brief update today on the travel demand model. A couple things to talk about. First, I want to mention that the model has gone now through a review process with TxDOT. We provided the complete model and all of the documentation for review. We received comments from TxDOT's consultant and from TTI and are now going through those and addressing all the comments we've received. This is a great thing because this allows these outside parties to take a second look at the model and ensure agency confidence in the model, so that once we've addressed these comments and given folks an opportunity to really look at the model, we expect to have a good level of confidence in this tool. At the last TPAC meeting, we also presented a live demonstration of something we call the model dashboard. This was just to give folks a little bit of an idea of what the model can do for people to start using it as the MPO staff, consultants, and others are using the model. This dashboard provides access to some frequently accessed metrics. It lets people compare different scenarios or alternatives, and it's set up and ready to start alternatives analysis for RMS 2050. I'll show you a few screenshots of what this does. The first is just an example where we can look at traffic volumes for various different scenarios, so say the daily or peak hour volumes. A little bit more interesting is to look at something we call the volume to capacity ratio. Everybody here is probably familiar with the Google Maps concept now, with the green, orange, yellow, red, different colors to indicate congestion. We can do that and look at existing conditions, but also look at, for example, a 2050 no-build condition and see how that might affect congestion. We also have a tool that a lot of the modeling folks really like called Select Link Analysis. Here you see a few pictures where someone can select a link. Basically, we identify a link anywhere in the system, and we ask the model to tell us where are the trips coming from and going to. And you can see here in some ways to visualize that, but also we're able to look and see where the origins and destinations are. So where are people coming from? Where which communities, which neighborhoods are most using a particular link? We also ran some sensitivity tests where we looked at potential situations to see how the model would react. This one here looks at a complete blockage of I-10, as you can see where that little red X is. And then shows how traffic can most efficiently reroute around that blockage. This does assume that people have good information and that people don't just sit on the highway all the way until they get to the closure, but they're using navigation tools, or that there's some sort of information such as traffic signage telling people to please reroute because of the closure up ahead. Here you can see the blue lines are where traffic decreases because you can't get through. And then the red lines show where traffic increases, where people would go around that closure. Very similar graphic here. This is a different concept, though, where we looked at what would happen if there was a long-term lane closure, for example, construction impacts on I-10. This is more of a medium-term analysis because people might decide, I don't want to have to travel that way, I'm going to go somewhere else. So people change the travel a little bit if this would be a longer period change. Here, the bandwidths look the same, just to make the graphic readable, but the numbers are much smaller. Not everybody is being rerouted, just a small number of folks who, because we have the reduced capacity along. So these are some examples of how the model can help us start to look at that type of information. And then the dashboard tool that will let model users quickly run these types of tests and see informative maps that communicate results. And that's all I have now. Any questions or comments?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. We can now move on to item 7 because I don't hear any questions at this time.
All right, item 7 is the RMS multimodal analysis update. This is a work that MPO staff did in coordination with TxDOT, with the El Paso district. We're very happy and very grateful to the district we were able to use one of their consultants, HNTB, to do this work, and I believe we have Jason Rodriguez ready to do this. So Jason, take it away.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jason Rodriguez. As Eduardo mentioned, I'm a senior planner at HNTB Corporation, and as he mentioned, we're a consultant to TxDOT, and we've been working closely over the last few months with the MPO staff as we've been developing the story map. And you know, just to give you a little bit of background for me, my background's in public transportation. I spent 10 years working for VIA and coordinating capital projects. So this type of planning work being done by TxDOT and the MPO is actually very exciting. I mean, this is an investment of resources in time, and I hope you'll enjoy the presentation. So it's not going to be a traditional presentation. This is a story map. This link was provided, so it is dynamic. There's some scrolling, and just to show you the sort of movement here, you can actually go to the various sections. And if this were a PowerPoint, though, I would be starting with sort of where we ended up, you know. And so what we'll do is kind of go through some of these opportunities for future work, and I'll use the story map to kind of navigate through and talk through some of these items. And then we'll talk briefly about the evaluation that we did, which is actually part of the 2050 MTP. So with that, I'll kind of get started here. The first one is partnership. So we just talked about how TxDOT and the MPO both partnered. And similarly, the regional mobility strategy offers that partnership opportunity that is currently being done in the El Paso region, where you have local governments, TxDOT, and the MPO all working together, identifying their mutual sort of needs and finding ways to fund these projects. So this is something that happens statewide. It's very common, where there are a lot of needs. There's some overlapping needs, and when those get identified, these partnerships can be very effective in delivering really, really good projects for the region. So the partnerships obviously are an important part. I would just say continue to partner. That's definitely one of the more or one of the important sort of outcomes of this. The next one is sort of this multimodal safety plan, and one of the items that we looked at as part of our analysis was to identify gaps, and we identified safety gaps, we identified connectivity gaps. A really good example, and there are actually a lot of good photos throughout the story map here. We won't get to see all of them during this presentation, but what you can see here, this is a great example of a connectivity gap. I mean, the sidewalk is incomplete. And then we also looked at safety gaps, like I mentioned. And just to give a quick example, we won't go through every technical aspect, but this is one that we'll go ahead and share. We did look at crash data from 2015 to 2020 and identified locations where there were severe and fatal crashes that involved a pedestrian. And so what we did is actually identified locations where you have 2 or more crashes within a half mile of each other. And those concentrations offer us some perspective on where we could sort of focus our investment and improve safety. So as an example, when we did this, what you're looking at on this map, in orange there are the severe pedestrian injury areas that I just kind of discussed. And then in blue, we also identified bicycle injury areas using a similar methodology. But kind of just to show this as an example, we'll zoom in on one of these severe pedestrian injury areas. And you know, again, there are hundreds of miles, if not a couple thousand miles of roadway in El Paso County and the MPO area. And so this offers us a way to sort of zoom in. And so we did identify a total of about 16 miles of roadway that would be qualified as a severe pedestrian injury area. This is less than 0.5% of all the roadway in El Paso County. What we did sort of notice here is that about 1.3% of people actually walk as their primary mode of transportation to work. But 17% of all severe and fatal crashes, regardless of mode, involved a pedestrian. So there's certainly a disproportionate number of these accidents or these crashes occurring. But what that does is tell us, okay, we can focus in and make these safety improvements in a sort of coordinated fashion. Another item that we looked at were how multimodal projects sort of come together. And the next sort of outcome that we are recommending is a regional transit plan. So I'll kind of talk about that. In this section of the story map, it's basically showing how there's project planning and construction, describing multimodal features, but then it kind of gets into the system, you know, the various networks. And in this part of the story map, there's transit, there's some bike information. We'll focus a little bit more on the transit side for the purpose of this presentation today. Happy to revisit the bike aspect if there are any questions there. But really what we're looking at here is the BRT network, and this is on both sides of the border. So this does include Brio on the El Paso side, and then Bravo Bus on the Ciudad Juarez side. And what you're looking at, solid lines, are what's in operation. On the Juarez side, there really is currently only one line operating, but there will be 3 additional lines operating by the end of summer. So the reason we really talk about or start with BRT and Brio is because this is really the backbone of the multimodal network. So people who are biking, they're walking, they're using other bus routes, they get to this service, and this is the most frequent service. It's the most reliable service that sort of gets people to where they need to go. And then just to kind of show the relationship to illustrate that there are several moving parts here. First, I'll start with Montana. This is a funded project that was briefly mentioned in the earlier Sun Metro presentation that we saw, and this is a funded project. But you can see how the entire Brio network, you can see sort of this light green, or the shaded back green is Brio, and then here is these orange lines represent the regular Sun Metro system. And what you see there on those yellow dots, those are the transit centers that are throughout the system. And this is simply showing that it's not just Brio. There's a lot of other ways to access Brio, and these routes are also very important. Investing in these routes is certainly important to get people to where they need to go. But really the importance of the transit centers in this case is to kind of show the regional connectivity. And now this starts to go beyond the Sun Metro system, where we're looking at regional connections that do tie into that system. And you can see in purple here, this is the El Paso County Transit fixed routes, and then in red you see the South Central Regional Transit District fixed routes that are all accessing these transit centers, allowing people to get from these rural areas to the Brio network and to the Sun Metro network. We're also showing the New Mexico DOT commuter routes, the Silver Line from Las Cruces to White Sands, and then also from Las Cruces into downtown El Paso. So there are these regional connections, and really sort of the idea behind this recommendation is to really help the rider, the user, understand where they need to go, kind of have the seamless connections between the various systems, and a seamless way to pay. And I know this is something that has been discussed within Sun Metro and other regional transit partners as well. But we do think that bringing all this together in a coordinated fashion is a good next step. And along those same lines, and I'll kind of just scroll back up here to the Brio system, one of our other recommendations was to really establish a transit supportive land use plan. And I know that within the city of El Paso, there's some planning that is going on that looks at locations where TOD, transit-oriented development, could occur, but doing this a little more intentionally to where you're actually aligning the capital investment that's being made in Brio and where certain locations that are along these lines might make the most sense for higher density. And the reason we talk about that, I mean, I'm sure everybody is interested in improving productivity, improving ridership for the entire transit system regionally. And there's 3 ways to do this. It's frequency, reliability, and density. And the frequency is a function of service. That's funding to make sure that there are enough buses to offer the service, but also that services that may be running at 20 or 30 minutes might be increased to 15 or 10 minutes where appropriate. So that's one way to increase ridership. Another is reliability. And in some cases, this could be a bus lane. This could be a queue jump, which is a way for a bus to sort of get through an intersection a little more reliably, a little more quickly as it's carrying passengers. And then, of course, the density. And that's how we get to this transit supportive land use plan, where you would be able to, in an organized fashion, increase density along these particular routes. And then the last piece that we did recommend, or that we're recommending, is to really look at project scoping. And what we mean by that is, a lot of these projects are roadway projects. most people, let's be honest, most people are traveling by car throughout the region. So it makes sense that there's a lot of roadway projects. But with a roadway project, there's various multimodal features that could be implemented to improve the pedestrian network, to improve the bicycle network, and even where appropriate, the transit network. And so really incorporating these features into those roadway projects is a way to sort of kill two birds with one stone. You know, you're improving the roadway, and you're also expanding various multimodal networks. So the last part that I will talk about as part of this presentation will be the evaluation that we did. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, this will actually play into the RMS 2050 MTP. It is not the only thing that is measuring the projects that were submitted to be included in the fiscally constrained plan, but it's certainly showing which projects are multimodal or supportive. And so this map right here is sort of showing all of those projects that were submitted. And what we did was we looked at these projects through a process of collecting data, identifying the gaps, like I mentioned, and then trying to see which of these projects sort of met the criteria that we established for this particular evaluation. And then we recommended multimodal supportive projects to be scored in that way as a multimodal supportive project. So that's how it'll be incorporated into the MTP. And this is just to show very quickly the criteria that was used. So you see goals and objectives of the 2050 MTP. So these are established by the MPO, and how various projects are evaluated. What we did was essentially use this as our framework for the criteria. So you see the severe pedestrian and bicycle injury areas that we talked about before. We looked at transit reliability, the ability for a project to actually improve roadway capacity, roadway travel time, and things like that. But then also the sidewalk gaps, bike lane gaps, and several other items, including density and future growth, that would help us to understand which of these projects are actually supporting further development of the multimodal network. So again, I should reiterate that this is just going to be a part of the MTP evaluation overall. But this is, as I mentioned, a pretty exciting way to really intentionally call out these multimodal networks and see how the projects sort of fare against the needs throughout the region. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop the presentation there and be happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
Madam Chair, I just got a question.
Please proceed.
Yeah, you know, I know that in the presentation you didn't say this, but I would gather that everything we're doing here, because, you know, some of these gaps in the sidewalks and everything showed they were not ADA compliant. So everything we'll be doing moving forward will be ADA compliant?
I would say that is an assumption that we can safely make. I mean, that is certainly part of the design criteria for implementing new sidewalks and things like that. So it would depend on who's the implementing agency, but as far as we can tell, that is something that is required across the agencies.
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't said. I just want to make sure that everything we do moving forward is ADA compliant, and it wasn't said, so I figured it didn't need to be said, but I thought I'd bring it up.
And Mayor, you're absolutely right. This is Eduardo. So, you know, any project that goes through the MPO funding using federal funds and all that, of course, has to be considering all the ADA requirements and all that. Not just because it's a requirement, but because it's a good idea. It's the right thing to do. So you're absolutely right on that. Let me just say one more thing about this. As Jason said several times, this exercise that you see here, we're going to use it and incorporate this information as we develop the new RMS 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. But even if, you know, but this thing is not just a one and done thing. You know, we will start working with all the partners, especially with Sun Metro and the agency, so that we truly look at the multimodal network and see where the gaps are and work together to figure out how we fill in those gaps. make the system a lot more efficient and more attractive. Again, we depend a lot on cars. We depend on the highway network, but if this is a way, it's only a beginning to start looking at seriously looking at the multimodal networks, including transit and bicycle and pedestrian facilities as well.
Thank you. There is a question by Alan. Go ahead.
Hi, Ellen Smythe, Sun Metro. I just wanted to make a comment that Sun Metro is currently working with the Texas Transportation Institute on a HOPE grant that was awarded by the FTA this year. And they are looking at partnerships with the El Paso County and the buses that they run in the far east side of the county to be able to find a recommendation where the two agencies can work together on the connectivity, just as Mr. Rodriguez was talking about, to bring those people to the infrastructure that we already have in place with the BRIOs. And also to remind everyone that we do have the Metro 31, which is our current TOD facility on the northeast El Paso, where Sunrise Center used to be, for those of you from the who were here back then. And we're working closely with the planning department on bringing development to that area. There is, as you know, a approved bicycle plan by City Council, and we work towards funding a piece of that project every year. Of course, it's very extensive, and we're not able to fund it completely all at one time, but it is part of our annual allocation on our budget. And this right now is budget season for the city of El Paso, and I will be recommending a $500,000 budget item for sidewalk improvements for ADA and accessibility. And of course, that can be used for, to help out in the bicycle area as well. But $500,000, it sounds like a lot of money, but concrete and installation of infrastructure is very expensive. So again, that's not a one and done, just like Mr. Rodriguez said, or Mr. Cava said, it's an ongoing process, and we have to make sure we address all the needs of our ADA community.
Right.
But those are the three things that we have right now: the grant with TTI, the Metro 31, and the working with the City of El Paso approved bicycle plan. And then hopefully here in the next month or two, I'll get the budget approved for FY22 that includes the additional $500,000 for sidewalk gaps. I just wanted to share with you that's already in the plan.
All right. Thank you, Alan. There's Sam Rodriguez has his hand up.
Yes, Madam Chair. Sam Rodriguez, City Engineer for the City of El Paso. Just to add to what the Mayor Leeser had noted, all of our projects are required by the state to meet ADA requirements. So anytime we do reconstruction of roadways, even the resurfacing of roadways, whether it be residential or arterial, all require the ADA compliance and inspection by registered accessibility state specialists through the state. So just want to clarify that for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I believe
Madam Chair.
Ms. Hernandez would like to comment.
Okay, go ahead and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cassandra Hernandez. I wanted to just share some comments about the presentation. First and foremost, wonderful presentation. I really believe that this is going to make the process fairer, but also streamline all of the efforts between the government entities. So I'm really excited about that methodology. And Mrs. Smythe just mentioned what my questions were. We do have multiple studies and plans that we've adopted along with other private entities like the Paso del Norte Health Foundation that are working on trails, a trail system county to county line. Will all of those planning documents be incorporated to this methodology planning from the different respective governments?
I'll take a stab at that. What you saw, Rep. Hernandez, is what Jason demonstrated is more than anything is a tool, right? That we're using, and we will continue to use the tool and feed more information and just make the process with improve the process with more data. So we welcome all studies, all information that we can obtain to make the process better. We will continue using it. At the end of the day, what we want to do is to be able to select the top priority projects and attack those. like Ms. Might said, $500,000 is not a lot. Doesn't get you a lot of stuff. So we've got to make sure that we spend it in the top priorities, right? But also at the same time work together, because that 500,000 could be used to leverage more state or federal money instead of just the city spending it by itself. I mean, there's multiple things, but I think the value of what Jason just presented today and the value of the work is that this is just a start, and it's a process that we hope to continue using and working closely with Sun Metro and the county on the Texas side for transit, as well as with the South Central Regional Transit District in New Mexico.
Great, wonderful, and I do believe it's a great framework. It's a great starting point. I would love to share all of that with you so that we can incorporate that. But also, as it relates to funding or matching dollars, will a project be more of a priority if that applicant has matching dollars in place, or will it just be, solely based on the need of the project? Mm-hmm. Will there be a matching requirement, or will it rank higher if there's dollars needed?
It all depends on where what type of program we're looking at. But again, if we identify the priorities and we can go through the MPO and get some either CMAQ money or STP money to get these projects, yeah, I mean it would be helpful. Right.
No, and I'm not referring to that funding. I'm saying from the applicant. So whether it's the city of El Paso, like if we were to have matching dollars or dollars set aside allocated for a specific project, would it rank higher in this process?
You mean within the MPO process?
Correct.
I don't believe we have that specifically now as a criteria to rank the projects, but it's something that we can take a look at. At the end of the day, what we want to do is have the smartest strategy to fund projects. Make sure that we get the best bang for the buck. Well, we can work on that.
All right. Okay, wonderful. I just wanted to share my support for it because it is the direction that the MPO needs to go. It streamlines the process. It's a wonderful framework. So I just wanted to applaud the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell.
Thank you, Representative Hernandez. Now I see Judge Amenego's hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to support, I've said before that we're building a lot of trails and walking, but we still don't have a culture here in El Paso. So the more that people see and visualize that there are opportunities to use your bike and use the trails, I think it's going to be extremely important, especially coming out of the pandemic. We saw a huge shift of individuals wanting to be outdoors, and we know that that's going to be very important for us, for more people to be outdoors, more people to see recreation as one of the best ways instead of the congregations that we probably need to avoid for a long period. And so this idea of shifting in that direction really coincides with keeping people focused. Right now, people are very interested in that, but they don't see possibilities and they don't see more visual out there that we are looking and going in that direction. And I think that culture is really important. We see the culture, for example, in Colorado or Denver, that they have a culture of being out there. So that's where we're at. A lot of money is being invested in trails, but we still have to somehow get that culture to follow suit. And so just want to thank you for that, coincide with some of the things that we have to do, post-pandemic going forward. So thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Judge. I don't see anybody else that has their hand raised, so we can move on then to item 8, the status report on the RMS.
All right, item 8 is a Regional Mobility Strategy RMS 2020 Project Development Status Report. Again, this is a monthly report. The backup information is in your available. Again, there's not much to report as far as the project development activities. Except that yesterday we got a really good piece of news for the Rojas Drive project, sponsored by the City of El Paso. Talk about PM10. We got concurrence that the project is not of air quality concern. which probably doesn't mean very much for all of you, but it's a major step. This is one of the stickiest steps or milestones that, because of all the coordination that needs to happen with Federal Highway, TCEQ, EPA. So it's a complicated process, but we're very happy to report that we got the approval yesterday. So that project's moving forward. Happy to answer it in case anybody has specific questions on individual projects. But the information is there on your backup packages.
Okay. I don't see anybody raising their hand to ask a question, Mr. Calvo, so we can now move on to the Executive Director's Report, item 9A and B.
Okay, so the Executive Director's Report, starting with A, Notice of Funding Opportunity for Fiscal Year 2021 RAISE Grant Program, former Build Tiger. Again, we sent out, as soon as we heard that this notice was issued by the U.S. Department of Transportation, we sent the notice to an email to all TPAC and TPB members, giving you the heads up on this. The program is now called RAISE, but it's the same program called Build or Tiger in the past. The key here, the deadline to submit applications is July 12th of this year. So if anybody, any agency is interested in submitting an application, we can help out, but more importantly, letters of support that are needed for individual applications, please let us know so that we can bring them here to the policy board with time. More than letters, I think that resolutions, formal resolutions from the policy board carry a little more weight than just a letter of support for the project. So if you are interested, please let us know so that we can include this in the May or June policy board meetings. If you have any questions on that.
There is a question by Mr. Miller.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is the thing I guess we've been waiting for, and the deadlines are just horrendous. We do have some projects there. There's a couple of things that we noticed about it. It looks like that they restricted it to $100 million per state. Is that correct?
Yes.
And in total, if we understand it right, there's only $30 million that would be appropriated to planning. Is that correct? Everything else has to be
that's how I read it. Yes.
And is that $30 million appropriated by state, or is it by project? Do we know how that works?
My understanding is that $30 million is available for that out of the $1 billion. It's a very, very small dollar amount. And of course, the $1 billion is the total pot that is available nationwide. So these programs are tremendously competitive. They're very, very difficult to be successful in getting funding. It's not a new program. Remember, the Tiger grants have been around since I believe they started back with the Obama administration. So they've been around for a while, but they are ultra competitive. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try.
Thank you. And as I said before, the timeline is just really, really tight. And you mentioned a while ago that if we wanted resolutions of support from the MPO, we should get them in quickly. I would like to expand on that a little bit to our fellow jurisdictions. Some of our projects we will be asking letters of support from other jurisdictions in the county, and we would ask that if we are asked, we will act quickly. We are asking the same courtesy that if we send you one, can we please get it, understanding that we have this deadline. The thing that would be helpful, perhaps the MPO could maybe coordinate this, is sample letters of resolution that can go out to the jurisdiction that can be easily adapted for use by everybody, so that I don't know how quickly we would do this, but perhaps we could circumvent some legal review if the language doesn't take too much review, because I think it would be imperative that each of the jurisdictions that are asked respond in kind as quickly as possible. And so maybe you could consider beginning to draft some sort of draft resolution that you could extend to all of the jurisdictions to help this process along, just for the matter of time.
Yeah, we could definitely craft a sample resolution. I'll work with Sergio Estrada to make sure that the language is appropriate and have it ready, to circulate it if it helps for other agencies or entities to use as a template.
And maybe they may be already out there. I don't know. There may be some sample. The other thing that perhaps the EPMPO could assist with, it seems that the feds have offered various training seminars on how to apply for these, but it appears that they are all at capacity already. And so at this point, is there any alternative for perhaps some sort of training to understand how best to submit these grants?
We'll look into it. Honestly, I had not checked the training opportunities, but if they're full, maybe they will open up other dates or other opportunities there. But we'll find out.
But Chair, if I may add a quick comment.
Of course.
I'm just going to take this opportunity to remind all of the member entities that if you are ever seeking a resolution from the El Paso MPO, specifically from the TPB, that it is critical that it be submitted, that the request be submitted with enough time so that it be presented to the entire board. We get requests all the time, and sometimes we get them right before the deadline, and there's no scheduled TPB meeting, and so it's always kind of a difficult situation to maneuver. And just taking this opportunity to remind everyone that if you want a TPB resolution, it requires the executive director to set it for an agenda to be presented to you all for approval. So just always keep that in mind.
Sergio, thank you for that comment, and that's extremely helpful. I'm going to have to step out, so Mr. Miller, if you could take over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and that's appropriate. As a follow-up to what Mr. Estrada said, as I said before, if you could draft that draft resolution that satisfies your requirements, certainly that would certainly be a help to some of the jurisdictions that are submitting for these projects. And if we had that ahead of time to take to our council and then get to you, I think it would streamline the process.
Right, and I'll work with the executive director and MPO staff on getting something drafted.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there further questions on this item?
Mayor Miller, I just want to make a quick comment that back in 2016, somewhere in that area, the city did apply for a Tiger grant, and Northeast Transfer Center was built when the city got awarded a Tiger grant. So that's been around for a while, and the city was able to take advantage of that back in 15 and 16.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. That's a really good comment. I mean, these programs are super competitive, but that's a great example that it can be done. Sí se puede.
Okay, are there any further questions or comments regarding this item? Okay, Mr. Caldwell.
All right. The next item is the Americans Jobs Plan. Again, I don't have much. I just wanted to bring this up for awareness. Well, I'm sure that most of you are aware that the proposal that came out of Washington D.C., President Biden's $2.3 trillion proposal for infrastructure that is being discussed. Of course, nothing is definite yet. It's going to go through a lot of discussion and perhaps changes and all that. But what we do know is that there has been some movement here, and Congresswoman Veronica Escobar in her office has been requesting and looking for ideas, projects that perhaps could be submitted as priority projects. So that process has been going on. I know the city of El Paso, the county of El Paso, and I believe the town of Horizon did submit some proposals to the Congresswoman's office. So we're really happy and hopeful that perhaps some of these projects can get funded or are included in that priority list whenever it comes out. So I just wanted to bring this to you all's attention, and happy to have any discussion or comments about this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Does anybody have any comment regarding that? Hearing none, Mr. Caldwell, I can't not see the entirety of the agenda, but I think that's the last item. Is that not correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So, well, the last item is actually adjournment. So let me read this. Item 10, adjournment.
Okay, our next meeting is at 9 o'clock on May the 21st. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. This is Commissioner O'Neill.
And do I have a second? Yes, we have a second.
Second Palacios.
Apparently. So we are adjourned. Thank you all.